And Orienté Objet are extremely interesting artists. Let's see if I can find the CV. I personally find the work something that is worth following. For the last 20 years, Orienté Objet have been working with some of the most profound issues to do with the relationship of humans with the rest of the world, and in particular with the living world around us, but much more than that. They have a background in, quite a diverse background in ethnopsychiatry and art, and also art. But also you've been the member or the representative of Alliance Française in Africa. So they're really trying to explore the issues from non-Western, or as much as they can, and obviously a very post-anthropocentric views in regard to life. And I think the piece which they're going to talk to us about, the winner of the Goldenica for 2011, May the Horse Be With Me, is a testimony to the rigor and the seriousness of their research. And oh, okay, it's working again. Non-anthropocentric. And what I think is really important is the risk-taking that they are willing to take, and this very, very strong notion of the importance and the urgency that the work seems to generate. So please, thank you, and congratulations for the Goldenica.
Toi, tu commences à parler et moi, j'ajoute.
Tu mets le diaporama.
So you want 20 minutes and then Q&As?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Oron, for choosing animal presence for reminding us that time is over. Nice choice. Guten Tag, and this is probably the maximum German you will hear from us today. And so we will continue in our European natural mother tongue, which is English, actually, of course. As European, we speak English. So it's not very easy to speak at two, so we decided to divide a little bit the time between a short presentation, like we would like to embark you in a very rapid travel on previous works, because we have been very impressed that yesterday, for example, we had been addressed a question which was, why doing it? Why doing this performance? And mainly have been interrogated about the relationship between art and science, which apparently our performance was very emblematic. And so we wanted to make a very quick survey on previous works, and then I will give the word to Marion so that she can more in detail into the performance itself. So I will comment very quickly these images so that you can understand our relationship between art and science. This, for example, about allergy test. And also there is something in preamble that I would state, is this question addressed to us yesterday, why doing it? We could have not done it somehow. At the same time, we thought just the idea was so important and so violent in its formulation that eventually we could have not done it. But the way we have been working throughout these 20 years in this relationship between art and science is to invent us each time at the beginning of each project and a sort of exploratory field, and then explore this field, because it is only exploring this field from the inside, as Oron stated earlier. It's only when you can do it, when you can achieve with your own hands a project, that you can retrieve from this experiment the background that you can symbolically address to the people. And our work is really about widening the consciousness. So all these images that you see are linked to very specific projects, very specific different projects. This one, for example, if we can stop a little bit on this one, was an invitation from a laboratory in France, the one from, directed from Axel Kahn, by Axel Kahn, We had been invited into this topic because some of the lab was very reluctant to experiment with cloning. And so there was a sort of an unease, but not very expressed. And we made a movie and an installation so that this unease could be revealed somehow and crossed. And so this is, and in this, of course, we have made it with very artistic tools. And this was, for example, a rabbit that was neat, exactly presented like it could be in an anatomy book with the specific colors, etc. But it was knitted with dolly's wool so that it can gain the very fetishistic aspect. And so these experiments, for example, this one in the pygmy religion in Gabon, and this is also about widening of consciousness. Well, this is going quite fast.
Yeah, I mean, this is on purpose. We are supposed to speak about the horse. This is just to explain that the horse is a kind of actual new step or achievement of lots of experiments that we did in the former times, like this one with avian flu feather, lots of stupid experiments.
This one about
we did.
ethology.
Cat ethology, prosthesis,
deer ethology,
deer ethology, giraffe ethology, electromagnetism, communication with animals.
There is this notion in this, why we choose this project is really, they were addressing already this crossing the interspecific border.
Yeah. Well, macaque stories, this is, all the study we did with the primate center in Kyoto, and, well, kind of things.
This is Australia, obviously.
Australian empathy. And then, so we arrived to this project that we presented here, which is May the Horse Live in Me. And, well, interesting. We must say that at the start, we wanted to do it with the panda. Mainly because we were very shocked by some of the advertising we received constantly from the ecological organization like the WWF, who was always telling us that they would not be able to defend all the animals, endangered animals. So we have to choose and to vote for which animal the money will go. And we were very surprised about this ethical issue about choosing behind different animals. And so we thought at a certain point the animal is just surviving because of the human will, and it would be interesting to be the body of this surviving. So we wanted to have this panda blood in us, so that we would not be only human anymore, but also panda people. Except no zoo accepted us. I mean, they didn't accept, no veterinary accepted to give the blood to us. So we had many of them, and it was quite difficult. Finally, we had to choose an animal which would be more approximate, more affordable, and the horse was a very convenient one because you have this whole mythology about the centaurus, and the horse is quite far away from the human being, so it was very fascinating for us to imagine what would be being wearing the horse. So we went to different laboratories to know about the feasibility of this thing, and there are very few laboratories actually working on blood compatibility. Some are doing it just in purpose of vaccination, but then they just use the serum of the blood without the components themselves. I mean, all the moles that can be removed from those serum are removed. And because of ethical committee, this kind of experiment has shrunken, and no one is really studying that anymore, except in places like Swiss, because it's not. I mean, it's not.
Switzerland.
Yeah, Switzerland, but c'est pas couvert par, well, it doesn't have to follow the European Community
ethical
rules.
regulation.
Yeah. So we went to see them, many laboratories in Swiss, and we were wondering if there would be a possibility of having this blood transfer, this blood transfusion. And well, we discovered it was not an easy thing. First of all, of course, the toxic component of the blood has to be put away, which is all the red cells and macrophage lymphocytes, big components. And then you have all the proteins of the plasma that could maybe taken, but usually when they do it, they just choose different family, and they choose it just for the cure of someone, like if you are at the late terminal state of a cancer, they consider maybe they can use it as a palliative medicine. So they choose, for example, for someone who would have a thyroid cancer, to use the immunoglobulins of the thyroid and just start with those ones. So at the start, when we went to see them, we were not, of course, telling them frankly we would like to have the whole blood transferred to us, or all the family of immunoglobulins transferred to us. We just wondered about what they were doing and if we could enter the protocol. And then, I mean, this is also something we have to see, because everyone is asking, is it easy to discuss with scientists and enter their laboratory? And this is not easy because, of course, there is a lot of fear about the mediatization of what they're doing, and they are fearing, of course, to be closed for ethical reasons. So it's always a long-term negotiation to be able to work with the laboratory, and this is a part of the artistic project. So we also went to this laboratory that I present here, which is the LITEC in Poitiers, because those ones are very advanced in spectroimmunology, and they are checking the response of the body. So they helped us understanding the consequences of what we would do. They didn't want to enter the process, of course, but they helped us very strongly to understand it. So we worked with them about the blood immunology, and we did lots of experiments which were in vitro before doing the in vivo thing. Like this is an in vitro vision of the meeting between human and horse blood, which actually 2 hours later gives this. That means everything is dying. So if we would have taken the whole thing, it would have been really dangerous, of course. We checked one by one the effect of all the immunoglobulins in the laboratory before trying them on myself. And during 2 years, I tried them individually on my body. So the first tryings were covered by the laboratory in Swiss, because they were I presented myself as a researcher wanting to understand the affective and psychological effects of those immunoglobulins on the body. And this peculiar aspect, they didn't study it before, so they were very interested, except they were very surprised that I wanted to try each by, all of them, one after the other, so the wide range of those immunoglobulins, because they thought it was in some ways excessive, of course. And it's because I explained to some of them, but most of the laboratory didn't know, that my real purpose was to get them all together as a cocktail during the performance. And it was not only a symbolic gesture for us, which, it was first, because it was very much about the telling about this very thin boundary that exists now between species. And for us, it's very important to give a visualization, an embodiment to this problem of ethical concerns about species. But then, most of all, we wanted to be maybe feeling another way than human. I mean, we have done all those works about animal, which have driven us to study lots of ethological problems. We have lived in zoo, we have studied the comportment of animal and human together, breeding in the wild. And finally, we discovered we were ever human. So all the imagination we would have about animals were always built by a human thinking. So it was never something from the others. I mean, it's just the human fantasy. So the real purpose was to try to feel another way than only human, which was very subjective, and we must say lots of people say, is that art? And we had this question already with the pygmy initiation and different experiments we did before. And at the start, the experiment itself is artistic in the way that the purpose is very different from science. It's very much about awareness and about feelings. But then also, it drives after lots of visionary installations and more visual art that are changed by the point of view, which itself has been changed by the experiment. So the performance itself took place in Ljubljana in February, and it was in Ljubljana because it was impossible to find a place in France or Germany to do it, just because we always had this problem of principle of precaution, which means each time we ask for an emergency unit for this performance, everyone say, well, why do you need an emergency unit? Well, because the experiment is dangerous. Why do you do it then? And of course, it was very complex to obtain it, and we were very lucky to find those nice people from the Capellica, who were very aware and enthusiastic about it. So we had this experiment, and first, I must say that we had, I felt a lot of immediate effect, like high fever and big agitation in my body. I mean, the body is reacting very strongly. This is why we organized this methodization before, to avoid having an anaphylactic shock. And the performance was also composed with an ethological part. You can see behind the column the ethologist, who was very discreet. Because at the start, I had no specific familiarity with the horse, and it was very much about meeting someone. And so the horse was there to remind people that it was in the body, and it was a presence. We wanted it to be there. So we had, we did those prostheses because we could, and we tried them only for the performance because no one knew what the horse would act or would react to if we were as high as he was, and we were very supposing that it would be more friendly, which it was actually, because most of the horse are having this eye communication that we miss because we are too low. And so this whole performance thing was also about forgetting the fear of doing the experiment. I mean, doing it is always a little bit frightening, and the performance is there to make it happen in some way. So after, I mean, half an hour after the shoot, he took my blood, 15 samples of blood, because this is the time when I will have the biggest amount of horse blood and horse markers in my body. So this was important for us to have this relic, this proof of the experiment, because this is in some ways a centaurus blood. And we could notice that just 20 minutes after it has been taken, when we wanted to lyophilize it, to conserve it, to preserve it, we remarked that it was already totally coagulated, which means the inflammation in the body was very strong. And this was quite impressive, I must say. Then, of course, the immediate effect was more like a big flu. And unfortunately, we could not stay in the gallery for days. But the maximum, I mean, the real effect happens 2 days later, 2 days, and it stays for 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, I could feel things that were extremely different from my personal, usual body reaction. Like I couldn't sleep an entire night. I was just sleeping 1 hour and then being awake 1 hour, then sleeping again 1 hour. So finally, for 2 weeks, I didn't sleep more than 4 hours every night. Benoit could tell you I was very nervous also during this time.
Yeah, I certainly can.
More nervous than usual, and I was also strangely feeling extremely powerful, and at the same time I was feeling very frightened. I mean, someone bothering me was really frightening me much more than I could ever feel. So I think I felt things inside me that were totally contradictory to the human being, like having together these powerful impressions and these fear impressions is totally against being a primate. Usually when a primate is powerful, is confident. And so this changed a lot my feelings about fear. And I must say I'm much more respectful for frightened people now. And I think I would stop, as a psychologist, trying to fight against fear. I think it's a vain thing. And you can use it much more than fight against. And, well, all those impressions, in some ways, were very precious. I have noted them very precisely. And we intend to do more works from them. But I must say that the performance itself is already for us a major step in our work as an artistic performance, because we think it's also showing the great importance that an artist has today, which would be to show that the freedom in our world is shrinking every day, that the observation on our bodies, on our comportments, choices, and so on, is more and more increasing. And suddenly, doing that kind of thing, which are transgressive, not for us about ethical things, but, I mean, it's more transgressive for social purpose than for ethical purpose. This transgression talks a lot about the necessity that the artist has to focus on the freedom that people should still fight for. In some way, trying that kind of extreme experiment is also a way to show that you can still be free of trying things with your body, which is more and more becoming shocking for the society, and in some ways, for me, it's shocking that it shocks people. So,
time for questions?
Oh, wow. This is great, you see. So this is time for questions. Thank you.
And shows how jet lag I am. Actually miscalculated my time, so there's extra 5 minutes. So we've got 15 minutes for question and answers, mainly to do with Untitled Object work. But if anyone's got any urgent things to ask me, I'll be more than happy to respond to that as well. But let me start maybe with provocation, and I just enjoyed. But, you know, as back as 2003, Annick Barrault in Art Press wrote about bioart and talked about bioart as the art of believing. The idea that we need to trust artists and we need to trust that what they're telling us that they're doing is really true. And it seems that, you know, even in your case, you were going to quite a lot of length to show us that the work itself has been documented throughout the whole process so we can believe it. How important it is, you think, for the artists to actually do what they claim they're doing, or is there a place for artistic interpretation or artistic license within the wider range of that? You know, going back to the story that, or the question that we had yesterday from Gerfried about, do you really need to go through this whole thing? And does the story is sufficient for the actual exercise and for this notion of the trust? Because should artists be trusted? I suppose that's the other question that we should ask.
I think the choice of the performance has a lot to do with this question of visual evidence, because art is really visual before all, and so for us, I think the fact that people could see us in the performance time, that is, in the intensity of a stage, all together for a determinate time. They had the possibility of seeing not only a biological process, a biological experiment, but also an ethological experiment. And, well, you could certainly say somehow that the bodies don't lie. And it's true that neither the horse body, neither Marion's body, in this circumstance could lie. So this visual evidence is really, after this, we didn't have nothing to add. I mean, and even if there is a controversy after about the authenticity of the biological process, or the fact that everything was on the stage during the performance for us is, well, end of the thing.
But in more general terms, why do we need to go to such a length in order for people to trust us?
Well, it's not only a question of trust for me. I mean, it's more like, at a certain point, an artist just experimented lots of things about his fantasy and this imagination. And you feel that you would be a better artist, maybe not a better artist, but someone more, an honest artist. I love this word and definition of the artist. An honest artist, just trying to dig more into your brain to be able to enlarge your vision and so to transmit something to the people that would be in some way different from their own experience. So we did lots of different experience, and as soon as you start with this, you're never ending it. I mean, it's an addiction. It's very bad. I mean, but we got addicted to that kind of hard experiment who would show us the limit of the body, of our body. And in some way, it's also a way to show people that, you know, people, this is something people speak a lot in anthropology. The fear is very different from a person to the other. So the more you experience things, the less you fear, usually. And I suppose our fear border became quite far away. So we have to go further. But at the same time, I think it's useful for people who fear. I mean, it's interesting for people to see that it's doable and that the fear should not be where they think it is. I mean, it's like, you know, tell me what you are hiding. And if you are going in places that are supposed to be taboo, suddenly you discover this is not where the hidden things are.
Thank you. I think Robert's got a question.
Shall I speak? Oh, yeah, okay. Rob Lafreniere, curator, Arts Catalyst. My question is kind of the opposite correlate to your question, and I want to direct it specifically towards Marion and Benoit, which is that, can the curator be trusted? Now, by curator in this case, I mean the support network. That includes Yuri from Kapellica, Jens Hauser, possibly all the people that you've discussed. Because I want to put this theoretical question to you, because it's concerned me a lot as a curator, particularly in thinking of the work of people like Oron, people who are going to extremes. If you hadn't got the encouragement or the support network or the people sort of enabling you to do this, would you have done it anyway?
Oh, yes, certainly.
No doubt. No doubt. I'm totally unconscious. Yeah, I would have done it anyway. I was doing it anyway. The problem was, should I do it publicly or not? And at a certain point, it was important for people to do it publicly. We have done works in the 90s that we documented, but we did not do it publicly because we were not famous enough to accede museums or contemporary art centers. And all the critics were like, oh, this didn't happen at all. So the problem was, okay, if they need this, we'll do it in front of them. But it would not change the fact that lots of things are happening in every artist's lives that can be done for art and produce new art after. And, well, we have to trust them a little, even if it's not public.
Any other questions? Yeah, over there.
I have one also. Should I be first?
Two questions at the same time?
As I understand, this feeling, being a horse, metaphorically said, was very much important. So, how could you prove that you didn't or couldn't sleep for 14 days,
14 days.
because you were believing that something like that will happen? And also, could you please explain what, scientifically or medically explain, what is going on in the body of human being after accepting the blood of animal?
Well, actually, those immunoglobulins, they are very known for people. I mean, people know the immunoglobulins that are antibodies, but most of the immunoglobulins are transmitters. They are messengers. They go from an organ to the other, from the brain to the liver and so on. I mean, they are supposed to give indication to your body. And I was very surprised that this little quantity of them, I mean, this is a little quantity in terms of cc, but if you look at them, there are millions inside. And they were not produced by my body at all, so they were like a surprise for it. And the body just had to react. What happened, when I speak about this mithridization process, it's very interesting. I mean, normally, when you got that kind of injection, you would have this anaphylactic shock, which is like your body can't take it. And the mithridization is not something to make your body accurate to the experiment. It's something that would make your body stop only what they recognize already. So they will stop just a part of them, and a huge part of them will then join the organs that they are supposed to join. Except if you see in a spectrometer the size of the horse immunoglobulins, they are much bigger than the human ones. So your receptors don't understand the form they should have. It's like, you know, a key and the lock has to get enlarged. So to enlarge, it's producing anarchic responses. And at the start, I thought it was just anarchy, so I discussed a lot with immunologists, but not only human immunologists, veterinarian, zoologists. immunologists, and they told me that, of course, especially the neuroendocrinal system is very different from a horse to the human. And if you address to a human body those information transmitters that are the horse one, your body would react with unusual ways. And well, this powerful thing, for example, is just a hiring of the metabolism, which means that the thyroid gland is working more. And you're not supposed to have that for 2 weeks. And if you have that for 2 weeks, you feel like a crazy hyperthyroid person, which is a very strong, nervous, powerful person. But of course, when it stops, you get totally exhausted and you faint. I mean, what happened after those 2 weeks is that I had no slow decreasing. I suddenly, I was suddenly extremely exhausted and slept for 3 days. So this is like a very artificial information that has been sent to the body that will make your body react in a very different way. In some way, I don't need to register that. I registered it at home. I could have done it in a laboratory, but since the laboratory I was working for was confident in me and took me as a researcher, they just took my papers, and that was okay for them. My own credibility was there too. So. There are also people who ask me if it was a psychological effect. Well, I wish it would have been, but actually, you like to sleep, and sleeping just 4 hours a night for days is a little bit short. So this was not psychological.
What I find quite astonishing is that you now say, because we are observed all the time, and because we leave so much digital traces, and because of what Derek de Kerkhove said yesterday, that we should learn better to deal with our non-knowledge of the digital unconscious, what others can gather of what we really are about, what we would wish for tomorrow. So if you ever have seen a nice placed ad for you by Google, you know that the unconscious is already working. And I cannot make this translation right now because you are choosing a horse, and the horse is the, let's say, the domesticated working animal that has already reached the post-histoire. So most horses in the world are cuddled by children, girls are riding on them, and some make high sports. But none is sort of really enslaved, you know, to carry the thing. Mm. And the horsepower might become electronical power, so the horse is free to live. And the question is, do we have any analogies of that we human beings, actually, without having seen it, have reached post-histoire? Yeah? And capitalism doesn't want to, you know, really, you know, how to say, let down its hair. We could all work less, and we could all be much happier, and so on and so on. So the first thing is, why the horse? Yeah, so is that a sort of animalistic utopia that we should join, their freedom? And the second is, how do you convey this ambivalence of total strength and incredible fear? Will you...
Comment tu mets ensemble le pouvoir et la peur? Justement.
So I heard you say that. It was like 4 sentences
yeah.
in the media chain to reach me. So if the Arte team, or will you make an own documentary? Are you know, the translation to a broader public? Maybe not talking about the experiment at all. How do you help me if I'm a bit paranoid, like maybe all of us here, of Facebook and Google? How do you help me with your experience and with your with this experiment or your ongoing process?
Well, 3 questions.
Sorry.
No, well, the horse, as I told you, the problem is to get blood. And so you could only get blood from slavery animals, as you describe them. I mean, of course, farm animals. And between them, I think the horse is the more distant from our immunological system and from our reaction system. So I was very curious about it. I mean, more than about a pig, which is very proximate to the human. Could have been a sheep, why not? I mean, the horse was chosen because also it's very big, so the distance is bigger, so l'enjeu, comment tu dis l'enjeu?
The goal.
The goal was more interesting. The challenge was better. Then your second question, c'était quoi déjà? Oh, okay. Well, this is easy. I think that more and more we don't react. I mean, we react, but not really personally, or we become indifferent to the change of things. You know, for example, in France, when they say we will have those digital passport or ID, everyone say, oh, it will be very difficult to have French accepted this, and when we will vote this, no one will accept. And finally, everyone voted it very easily. And I think we are changing more and more. Our comportments are changing more and more because we feel totally unpowerful considering our place in the society. We think we are too numerous, we are not decisionary, and someone will take the decision for us. We are living more and more under procuration. And I mean, the last right you should have would be to use your body the way you want, but this is not even the reality. As a teacher, for example, they asked me last year to be vaccinated against this avian flu. Of course, I did not, but this was an obligation, so you have to lie to people saying you did it, but you did not, and you have to organize this lie. And finally, doing things that are transgressive, considering what the society agrees that you're supposed to do. You're not allowed to be transfused with human blood. It could be, you could even be attacked by your government, like you would be committing suicide in some ways. And you know it's not allowed to commit suicide. There were even family suing their children because they committed suicide so that they would be put in psychiatric hospital. So since I have been working a lot in psychiatric hospital, I can see that you have less and less possibilities of expressing this will of being what you want to be. And this is very important, I think, to have that kind of experiment to show people that it's still doable. You can still be, well, they would call you maybe a socio-terrorist, I don't know. But for me, it's important to show that you can still do it, even if it's considered like a radical thing, an extreme thing. Yeah, you were expressing another question, I can't remember. So this is good. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, and we will reconvene here in 20 minutes at 4:40. And we'll have an opportunity to continue the discussion after the session as well. So please, thank you so much.
Thank you.